guys, in today's video we're talking to you all about intermittent fasting, answering the most important questions you need to know.
So the first question is, what is intermittent fasting?
Okay, so first of all, let's just break down the words. Intermittent means occurring at irregular intervals. It's not something that you do continuously or steady. And then fasting means you're going for a period of time without eating anything or certain foods. So intermittent fasting is just a brief, irregular time that you're going without food. So then the next question would be, why do people intermittent fast, or why would they want to?
There are a couple of different reasons why. The first one is obviously weight loss, fat loss. It helps you get into caloric restriction easier, calorie deficit, which helps with fat loss. It also helps optimize hormones. It's really good for digestion as well. It's good to just give your body a break sometimes from eating all the time to allow the rest and digest processes to happen. And obviously for religious purposes as well. So there's multifaceted reasons why people intermittent fast.
And when people ask us, they're usually starting from a place of weight loss.
Yeah. Should I try intermittent fasting?
As long as you are a generally healthy person and you've spoken with your healthcare physician, then definitely I recommend just try intermittent fasting. You want to try anything so that you can use it as a learning process to learn about yourself, learn about foods, learn about your body, and learn about your eating habits. Okay, so I've decided I want to try intermittent fasting. Now I need to know some of the details. Can I drink anything while I'm intermittent fasting?
We recommend that you don't drink anything of caloric density. So, teas without any sweeteners, branched chain amino acids, BCAAs that have 0 calories, things that are 0 calorie in nature. And obviously that excludes like 0 calorie soft drinks and things like that. Forget that.
You want it to be healthy.
Yeah, but teas, water, branched chain amino acids, those things all work during your fasting window. So what are the best IF schedules and protocols?
The best times that I would recommend would be a 16 and 8 schedule. That's kind of your starter. So like 16 hours of fasting, 8 hours of eating. And then you can work up from there. So you can go to a 20-hour fasting, 4-hour feeding time. You can do 24 hours fasting, 24 hours feeding. So any of those ratios, start with 16 hours and work up from there. But it is important when you're first starting out to start slow.
Yeah.
You don't have to start with a 16-hour fast. If you're not even used to going 4 hours without eating, then start with that. Start with 4 hours. And then in the next day or maybe the next week, try a 5-hour fasting window. And just gradually build yourself up over time, and you're going to learn a lot about your eating patterns. Next question, when should I eat and when should I fast? Does it matter the time of day?
Now with this, there's no magical answer to that. It's just basically down to your lifestyle. So find a system that works well with your lifestyle, your routine. That's the best thing. That's the best approach. It's just approaching it from a place where, when am I training during the day? What does my work schedule look like? When are my lunch breaks? Those types of things all factor in. And even if you just finish your dinner meal a little bit earlier and have your first meal a little bit later, it might not be like a full-on 20-hour fast, but it's still something. So the main thing to remember is look at your schedule, look at your routine, and make it fit into that routine as best you can.
But it helps to consider your sleeping time as fasting time.
Yeah. So is there a minimum and maximum time to intermittent fast?
Well, hormonally speaking, you're going to start to see the hormone changes and benefits from intermittent fasting at the 16-hour mark. So once you've fasted for 16 hours, then the body hormonally starts to make the shifts that can help with fat loss and things like that. The maximum amount of time that you want to fast, hormonally speaking, again, would be 36 hours. That's kind of the point of diminishing returns. However, people who spiritually fast for often even longer than that, but that's a whole nother story. Now the question on the mind of every man especially, will I go catabolic if I intermittent fast?
Now, it's such a common question, and it's just not going to happen, generally speaking, unless you're in a massive caloric deficit, or you're doing some super long extended fasting protocol. For the average person who's consuming even in some degree of calorie deficit, if it's 16 hours or 20 hours, 24 hours, the body is just not designed to start breaking down muscle mass as soon as you haven't eaten for 1 or 2 hours. This is not going to happen. Hormonally, physiologically, it can actually be of benefit, believe it or not. So is intermittent fasting good for fat loss?
Generally speaking, intermittent fasting is good for fat loss for 2 reasons. One is the hormonal changes that happen when you're intermittent fasting that creates a good environment for fat loss. And number 2 is that when you're intermittent fasting and you have restricted feeding windows, it typically means that it's easier to get into a calorie deficit, which is needed for fat loss. Now, everyone's results are not going to be the same, but it typically does create a good environment for fat loss. Can I do intermittent fasting if I'm trying to gain muscle?
Absolutely. I've been intermittent fasting for probably the last 5 years now. I've gone through muscle building phases, fat loss phases. You can achieve muscle building and strength phases and fat loss phases and still do intermittent fasting. The take-home point is your total caloric intake and the quality of the nutrients within your feeding window. So if the quality of nutrients in your feeding window is high, your recovery is going to be well, your hormone optimization is going to be good, and if you're getting enough calories in that window to get you in a caloric surplus, you're going to be able to build muscle. So even if you don't eat for extended periods of time, if you consume a calorie surplus in your feeding window, you will gain strength and size.
If you have, of course, a good training stimulus as well to create muscle growth.
Yeah.
And it's good to point out that even though you're intermittent fasting, it's good for fat loss, but you can still gain weight when you're intermittent fasting based on that total calorie principle.
Yeah.
So it really comes down to what are you doing during that feeding window? Are you eating healthy foods and are you in a calorie deficit? Or are you still over consuming and eating a ton of junk food, just doing it in a smaller amount of time? That's not going to help you.
So is IF good for men and women?
Possibly. Men and women are different both hormonally speaking and emotionally speaking. So intermittent fasting, like we talked about a minute ago, can be either positive or detrimental to either sex, either gender, male or female. It all depends on how you do it. Some people will say that they've just heard that it's bad for women because women have a menstrual cycle and it can affect things like that. That won't happen unless you're doing it wrong, unless you're doing over the 36 hours or you're not eating enough calories for your body during your feeding window. But it's not bad for you just because you're a female. Is intermittent fasting right for everyone?
Obviously, the answer is not for everyone. Like, what is right for everyone, right? So you have to understand that it's through trial and error and your own biofeedback. So, for example, it may not be ideal for pregnant women or people with eating disorders, or there could be certain variables that could be of detrimental nature to a fasting protocol that is just not worth the trade-off. For most average people, though, I think it's a really good tool if done right. But that's the thing, is that you have to understand how to do it and execute it properly. But again, it's not always going to be right for everyone. And that's the take-home point, is that all these things have to be tested by you, see how you feel, before you actually know if it truly works for you or not.
Okay, so you mentioned if you're doing it right. What would be the key points that people need to keep in mind to make sure that they are doing it right?
I would say the first thing is quality calories in your feeding window. Make sure that you're eating good stuff first. Make sure that whatever your goal is, that your total calorie intake is geared towards that goal, and make it fit in with your lifestyle. So if it's really rigid and you're having to skip dinners with family and it's just a strain, it's not going to work long term. So it has to be integrated into your lifestyle. The calorie intake has to be in accordance with your goal, and you want micronutrients density, quality whole plant foods within that feeding window as well. And if you do that and have a good training program and you sleep well, you can't go wrong.
Well, first of all, the little guidelines that you just gave are perfect, like pocketbook guide to intermittent fast. So those are the things you need to remember to make sure that you're doing it right. Other than that, look at intermittent fasting as a learning experience for you. Try it out, do it gradually, try out different schedules, different methods, and test and track things so that you know really what's working and not just relying on your emotions at the time to determine whether you like it or not. Use intermittent fasting as a good tool to learn about your body and to learn about your eating habits. Do not just use it as a weight loss tactic. We hope that this helped to answer your main questions about intermittent fasting. Make sure that you like this video, subscribe to our channel, and leave us a comment below. Let us know your experiences with intermittent fasting if you've tried it. And also, if you have any other questions that you need us to answer, drop them in the comments below and we'll try to address them in the comment section for you.
And if you want to learn more on IF, get my ebook below in the description box. I go into much greater detail in there. I explain the protocols, I explain the micronutrient density, calories, and all the stuff that we covered in this video, but in more depth in my ebook below.
Alright guys, thanks for watching and we'll see you again soon in the next video.